Welcome back to Bookish Mind, Season 05, Episode 21, where we delve into Daniel Goleman's insightful book, Focus. What if the most impactful decisions we could make today are not for tomorrow, but for centuries to come? Today we're embarking on a deep dive into Leading for the Long Future, a powerful section of Focus that truly stretches our thinking. Our mission is to explore how adopting a deep future perspective thinking centuries ahead can completely reshape our decisions in the present, from individual choices all the way up to global policies.
Exactly. It's really about fundamentally expanding our mental aperture, beyond immediate gratification and those short-term gains we're often wired to pursue. We'll be looking at how our actions ripple across generations and impact the entire human system. And you'll discover some truly incredible minds who are already thinking and leading with this profound long view. It's quite inspiring, actually.
So, how do we even begin to grasp such a long horizon? I mean, centuries. Let's unpack this idea by starting with a truly fascinating personal anecdote from the author Daniel Goleman about his late uncle Alvin Weinberg. This man was a nuclear physicist, known as the conscience of that entire sector. Quite a title. He was famously fired as director of Oak Ridge National Laboratory after 25 years because he simply would not stop talking about reactor safety and, well, the inherent dangers of nuclear waste.
Yeah, he wouldn't shut up about it,
Right.
basically. He even controversially opposed using reactor fuel that produced material for weapons.
Wow.
And what's truly striking here is just how far ahead of his time Weinberg was. I mean, really ahead. Not only did he initiate one of the nation's pioneering R&D units on alternative energy, but he was also among the very first scientists to warn about the threat of CO2 and global warming.
Right.
Way back then. He actually confided in Goleman his deep ambivalence, maybe even fear, about for-profit companies running nuclear power plants. He was worried the profit motive would inevitably lead to cutting safety measures, a premonition, really, of what contributed to the Fukushima disaster decades later.
It really was. And he was particularly troubled, wasn't he, by the nuclear energy industry's persistent failure to solve the problem of radioactive waste. His vision was a solution that would persist as long as the waste remained radioactive, like an institution, maybe, dedicated to guarding those stockpiles and keeping people safe for centuries, even millennia.
For millennia. It's hard to even wrap your head around that timescale. And this really brings us to the core challenge of our deep dive today. How do we genuinely make decisions with this kind of truly long horizon in mind? It forces us to ask, how will what we do today truly matter in a century or even in 500 years? It's a massive question.
It really is.
Because while the specifics of our immediate actions might fade, right, the lasting consequences lie in the norms we establish. Those fundamental organizing principles for action that live on long, long after their originators are gone.
And it's alarming, isn't it, to see how often these long-term warnings are just ignored. You mentioned the U.S. National Intelligence Council, for instance. They made projections for the world in 2025. They predicted ecological impacts, creating scarcity of resources like farmable soil.
Right, vital resources.
And economic demand for energy, food, and water, outstripping available sources, leading to severe water shortages. All this leading to shocks and disruptions.
Exactly. Pretty dire warnings. And what happened when that report was delivered?
Well,
The federal government, unfortunately, kind of ignored the results. There's currently no specific agency, no office, no government position charged with acting for the long term. It's just not built into the system.
so the focus stays short term.
Yeah. Politicians often focus almost exclusively on the short term, on what it takes to get reelected, with virtually no attention paid to protecting future generations. It's a sobering thought that for many, saving their jobs commands more immediate attention than saving the planet or addressing poverty.
And it's not just politicians or governments, is it? It seems to be a very human inclination. Most of us, if given the choice, prefer immediate solutions. Cognitive psychologists find that people tend to favor the now in all kinds of decisions, like the example Goleman uses. I'll have the pie a la mode now, and maybe I'll diet later. We all do that, right?
We do. Columbia University cognitive scientist Elke Weber points this out. She says, we attend to the present, what's needed for success now. Yeah. But this is bad for far-sighted goals which are not given the same priority in the mind. So future focus becomes a kind of luxury. Waiting for current needs to be taken care of first. The crucial insight here is that our brains are often, well, kind of hardwired for the immediate, making truly long-term thinking an active conscious effort.
Okay, so if the short-term bias is so pervasive, how do leaders manage to make long-term decisions that might initially be unpopular? It seems like a huge hurdle. Let's look at some examples where the long view actually paid off, despite that initial resistance. Back in 2003, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg decreed that smoking was banned in bars. Huge deal at the time.
Oh yeah, massive opposition.
Bar owners claimed it would ruin business, and smokers naturally hated it. But he famously said, "You might not like it, but you'll thank me in 20 years.
Which takes some guts, politically speaking. And Elk Weber actually studied Bloomberg's ban and similar decisions to see just how long it typically takes for an initially unpopular change to become the new accepted status quo. And her data showed the range is typically surprisingly short, like 9 to 6 months.
Only 6 to 9 months. That's faster than you'd think.
Right. It's a crucial insight for leaders. It proves that even initially unpopular long-term decisions can gain public acceptance remarkably fast, often within a year or so once the benefits become clear. Even smokers in New York eventually liked the ban because, well, they enjoyed hanging out with other smokers outdoors, and everyone appreciated that bars no longer reeked of stale smoke. That was a big plus.
That's a powerful lesson in political courage and maybe patience. Another fascinating case study is British Columbia's provincial government. They imposed a revenue-neutral tax on carbon emissions.
Revenue neutral, that's the key part.
Exactly. The fees collected were immediately distributed back among the province's citizens. At first, there was tremendous opposition, naturally. But after a while, people kind of liked getting their carbon tax rebate checks. Can't blame them. 15 months later, the tax was actually popular.
Amazing, isn't it? These examples highlight what Weber calls the raising teenagers analogy, which I love. She says, politicians are in charge of our welfare. They need to know people will thank them later for a hard decision now. Quote, it's like raising teenagers, sometimes thankless in the short term, but deeply rewarding in the long. It really speaks to the patience and vision required for truly effective leadership.
It certainly does, and here's where we start to see the cost of not thinking long-term, maybe. Jonathan F.P. Rose, a founder of the Green Community Planning Movement, he observed something interesting after Hurricane Sandy devastated parts of New York City, especially the Wall Street area. He said you didn't hear any climate warming deniers down there anymore.
Direct experience changes minds, perhaps.
Seems like it. In the Wall Street culture, a quarter is typically considered a long time away, right?
Yeah.
But Sandy may have gotten them to think about a much longer time horizon in a very visceral way.
Yeah, suddenly it wasn't abstract anymore. And Rose added a sobering thought. If we reduce our production of heat-trapping gases today, it would still take at least 300 years for the climate to begin to cool. Maybe much longer.
300 years minimum. That's daunting.
It is. So while we have these strong cognitive biases toward present needs and are generally, let's face it, weak thinkers about the faraway future, the good news, maybe, is that we are at least starting to recognize the degree to which we have put human and natural systems at risk.
Yeah.
What we desperately need now is leadership imbued with that essential long view that a comprehensive systems understanding brings.
So if this long view is so critical, what does it actually look like when applied in the business world? Beyond just government policy, Goleman suggests it could mean nothing less than reinventing business itself by finding shared values supported by all stakeholders, stock owners, employees, customers, the communities where a company operates. Some call this conscious capitalism.
Exactly. This approach involves orienting a company's performance around benefiting all stakeholders, not just aiming for those quarterly numbers that please shareholders. It's not just about maximizing profit, but also thinking about minimizing environmental impact, fostering fair labor practices, strengthening local communities. These are decisions that ultimately pay off in reputation, loyalty, and often, long-term financial stability.
And there's evidence for that, right?
There is. Studies show that companies like Whole Foods and Zappos, with this broader view, actually tend to do better financially than their purely profit-oriented competitors. But, and this is key, for a leader to articulate such shared values effectively, they must first look within. Find a genuinely heartfelt guiding vision. The alternative, unfortunately, is just hollow mission statements that are totally belied by their actions. We've all seen those.
Definitely. It's fascinating how even leaders of seemingly great companies can suffer a blind spot for long-term consequences if their time frame is too small. To be truly great, Goleman argues, leaders need to expand their focus to a much further horizon line, even beyond decades. While simultaneously refining their systems understanding to a much finer focus, it's like zooming out and zooming in at the same time. And their leadership then needs to actively reshape the systems themselves, not just operate within the existing ones.
That brings to mind Paul Pullman, who was CEO of Unilever. a great example. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, he presented a truly groundbreaking vision to Daniel Goleman. Pullman announced that Unilever had adopted the goal of cutting the company's environmental footprint in half by 2020. That was back in 2010, so a decade-long commitment.
Which is laudable, of course, but as you said, other companies set similar goals.
Right. Many socially responsible companies do that. But what Pullman said next was what really struck Goleman. Unilever committed to sourcing its raw agriculture material from small farms, aiming to link to 500,000 smallholders globally.
500,000, that's huge.
Massive scale. These farmers mainly grow tea, but the initiative also includes crops for cocoa, palm oil, vanilla, coconut sugar, a whole variety of fruits and vegetables. Across Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Indonesia, China, India, all over. This wasn't just a CSR initiative. It was a fundamental redrawing of their entire supply chain. Really systemic thinking.
So what was the goal there for Unilever and for the farmers?
Well, Unilever hopes to link these small farmers into their formal supply chain and work with groups like the Rainforest Alliance to help them upgrade their farming practices, make them reliable, high-quality sources in global markets. For Unilever, this diversification strategically lowers risks in a turbulent world where food security is a growing future issue. Smart business, really. And for the farmers, of course, it means more income and a much more certain future.
Yeah.
So it's long-term thinking that benefits everyone involved.
And the wider benefits.
Pullman pointed out, this redrawing of the supply chain would have a whole range of benefits, from leaving more money in local farm communities to fostering better health and schooling. In fact, the World Bank actually points to supporting smallholder farming as the single most effective way to stimulate economic development and reduce poverty in rural areas.
Wow, that's a powerful impact.
It is. Sherry Tan, who heads this Unilever initiative, notes that in emerging markets, 3 out of 4 low-income people depend directly or indirectly on agriculture for their livelihoods. And critically, 85% of all farms worldwide are in this smallholder class. So there are great opportunities, as she says. This just demonstrates how focusing on social needs can itself foster innovation and create sustainable business models if you combine it with an expanded field of attention to what people genuinely need.
It really reframes the purpose of a company, doesn't it? If we see a company as little more than a machine for making money, we entirely ignore its complex web of connections. To the people who work there, the communities it operates in, its customers and clients, and society at large. Leaders with this wider, longer view consciously bring these vital relationships into focus.
Absolutely. And while making money absolutely matters, let's be realistic, leaders with this enlarged aperture pay deep attention to how they make money. And so they make choices differently. Their decisions operate by a logic that doesn't just reduce to simple profit-loss calculations. It goes beyond pure economics, balancing financial return with the public good and, crucially, future viability.
So in this expanded view, a good decision allows for present needs as well as those of a wider web of people, including future generations. And leaders like that inspire people, right? They articulate a larger common purpose that gives meaning and coherence to everyone's work. They engage people emotionally through values that make people feel good about their work, that motivate, that keep people on course toward that shared long-term vision.
Exactly. And it can spark innovation in unexpected ways. Take the example Goleman gives of managers at the India division of a global consumer goods company. They observed village men bloodied by barbers using rusty razors, an immediate visible problem. But instead of just, shrugging, they saw an opportunity. They figured out ways to make new razors cheap enough that those villagers could afford them.
So it wasn't just charity.
Not at all. It was about identifying an unmet need that, when addressed, created a new market and fostered loyalty. Good business again. And such projects create organizational climates where work has real meaning and engages people's passions, allowing their labor to become good work with long-term impact.
Let's imagine taking that kind of thinking to scale. Goleman mentions Ben Jerry's ice cream. One of its popular flavors, chocolate fudge brownie, needs brownies broken up into the ice cream. Simple enough. But Ben Jerry's sources truckloads of these tasty cakes from the Grayston Bakery, located in a poverty-stricken neighborhood of the Bronx.
Right, and Grayston Bakery is special. It operates on an open hiring policy. They train and employ people who really struggle to find work, including parents who were once homeless, who now live with their families in nearby low-cost housing. Their motto just encapsulates this long-term, people-focused vision. We don't hire people to bake brownies. We bake brownies to hire people.
That's powerful. We bake brownies to hire people.
It really is. And this kind of thinking represents the fresh, systems-level approach that these really intractable dilemmas call for. There's a kind of hidden ingredient in any true solution, enhancing our attention and understanding in ourselves, in others, and crucially in our communities and societies, and stretching that understanding across time.
And Goleman makes the point that leadership isn't just for CEOs or politicians, right? In the sense that leaders influence or guide people toward a shared goal, leadership is actually widely distributed, whether within a family, on social media, in an organization, society as a whole. We are all leaders in one way or another, with the potential to apply this long-term thinking.
That's a really important point. And he differentiates between what he calls a good enough leader and a great leader. A good enough leader typically operates within the givens of a system, maybe benefiting a single group, executing a mission as directed, mostly tackling the problems of the day as they arise. Kind of reactive.
Okay, so focused on the present system.
Exactly. In contrast, a great leader defines the mission. They act on many levels, and they courageously tackle the biggest, most complex problems. Great leaders do not settle for systems as they are. They see what those systems could become. And so they work to transform them for the better, to benefit the widest circle possible, looking far beyond their immediate tenure or election cycle.
Then there are those truly rare individuals who shift beyond mere competence to, well, wisdom. Operating on behalf of society itself rather than a specific political group or business interest, they are free to think far, far ahead. Their aperture encompasses the welfare of humanity at large, seeing people as we, not just us and them. These are the leaders who leave a legacy for future generations, the ones we remember a century or more later, like Jefferson and Lincoln, Gandhi and Mandela, Buddha and Jesus.
Truly transformational figures. And connecting this to today's challenges, one of the most profound wicked messes, as Goleman calls them, is the paradox of the Anthropocene. That's the term for our current geological epoch where human activities are the dominant force shaping the planet.
Right, we're literally changing the Earth's systems.
We are. Which means our human systems are now profoundly affecting the very global systems that support life. And it seems like we could be headed for a kind of slow-motion systems crash. Finding genuine solutions requires what Goleman calls Anthropocene thinking, which is essentially understanding these deep, interconnected systems dynamics and identifying points of leverage to reset our course for a better, more sustainable future. This level of complexity just adds to the layers and layers of challenges leaders face today as seemingly isolated problems escalate into these huge, interconnected messes.
And one example is how, through the health and ecological impacts of our lifestyle, the world's richest people are often inadvertently creating disproportionate pain for the world's poorest, which highlights why we might need to reinvent our economic systems themselves, factoring in human needs and well-being, not just focusing narrowly on economic growth figures.
Absolutely. Consider the growing gap between the very richest and most powerful and the poorest worldwide. While the rich certainly hold power, Goleman points out that this very status can, unfortunately, sometimes blind them to the true conditions of the poor, leaving them indifferent to their suffering. Which raises a fundamental question, doesn't it? Who, then, can truly speak truth to power and advocate for that long-term equitable view?
It's a critical question. As Larry Brilliant wisely says, and Goleman quotes him, civilization should be judged not by how they treat people closest to power, but rather how they treat those furthest from power, whether in race, religion, gender, wealth, or class, as well as in time. Looking across generations, a great civilization by this measure would extend compassion and love to them, too, thinking across generations.
A powerful standard. And while the perks and pleasures of a robust economy are alluring, there are also the diseases of civilization, right? Like diabetes and heart disease, often worsened by the rigors and stresses of modern routines, plus, processed junk food. And this problem intensifies as we fail to make medical services equally available to all in much of the world, another consequence of short-sighted, inequitable systems.
And then there are the perennial problems. Inequities in education and access to opportunity, countries and cultures that privilege one elite group while repressing others, nations that are failing, devolving into warring fiefdoms. The list just goes on and on.
It does. And problems of such immense complexity and urgency demand an approach to problem-solving that integrates our self-awareness and how we act, our empathy and compassion, with a really nuanced understanding of the massive, interconnected systems at play. To even begin to address such messes, we need leaders who can focus on multiple systems simultaneously: geopolitical, economic, environmental, social, you name it. But sadly for the world, so many leaders are just preoccupied with today's immediate problems that they simply lack the bandwidth, or maybe the inclination, for the long-term, species-level challenges we face.
Peter Senge from MIT Sloan School, he developed the concept of the learning organization, which inherently brings a systems understanding into companies. And Senge says, essential to understanding systems is your time horizon. That makes sense. If it's too short, you'll ignore essential feedback loops and come up with short-term fixes that won't work in the long run. We see that all the time. But if that horizon is long enough, you'll have a chance of seeing more of the key systems at play. He adds, the bigger your horizon, the bigger the system you can see.
That's a great way to put it. Rebecca Henderson, who teaches ethics and the environment at Harvard Business School, also champions this systems framework. She notes realistically that transforming large-scale systems is hard, very hard. Recycling, for instance, she says represents change at the margins, important but marginal, while abandoning fossil fuels altogether would represent a true system shift, much more fundamental.
Big difference.
Huge. She teaches a surprisingly popular course on reimagining capitalism and favors things like transparency that would accurately price externalities, say CO2 emissions. That, she argues, would naturally cause markets to favor any means that lowers those emissions, fundamentally shifting the incentives within the system.
So using market mechanisms for long-term goals. Interesting. At that same MIT meeting on global systems where Henderson spoke, the Dalai Lama shared a truly powerful message that seems to encapsulate this entire deep dive we've been having.
He did. He said, we need to influence decision makers to pay attention to the issues that matter for humanity in the long run, like the environmental crisis and the inequity in income distribution, not just their national interest, a truly global perspective. And he also emphasized a profound truth. We have the inherent capacity to think several centuries into the future. We can do this.
We have the capacity. And here's the ultimate call to action, maybe the cornerstone of truly long-term leadership. The Dalai Lama urged us to start the task even if it will not be fulfilled within your lifetime. Quote, this generation has a responsibility to reshape the world. If we make an effort, it may be possible to achieve. Even if it seems hopeless now, never give up. Offer a positive vision with enthusiasm and joy and an optimistic outlook.
That's such a powerful charge, isn't it? Start even if you won't finish it. And it really brings us to the ultimate question Goleman poses. A triple-focus self, others, and systems might help us become successful, sure, but toward what end? We must constantly ask ourselves, in the service of what exactly are we using whatever talents we may have? If our focus serves only our personal ends, self-interest, immediate reward, our own small group, then in the long run, Goleman suggests all of us as a species are doomed. A stark warning.
It is stark. So the largest lens for our focus, the one that truly defines great leadership, encompasses global systems. It considers the needs of everyone, including the powerless and the poor. And it peers far, far ahead in time. No matter what we are doing or what decision we are making, the Dalai Lama suggests these simple yet profound self-queries for checking our motivation. Is it just for me or for others? For the benefit of the few or the many? For now or for the future?
Those three questions are incredibly clarifying, aren't they? This deep dive has truly highlighted that authentic leadership, the kind that leaves a lasting positive mark on the world, isn't just about solving today's immediate problems, putting out fires. It's about having the vision and the courage to design a future where solutions endure for centuries, where the norms we establish become the resilient foundation for generations yet to come.
That's a truly inspiring and frankly challenging vision. It makes me think about how fundamentally different our approach to so many global challenges would be if we truly adopted that mindset. So for you, our listener, here's a thought to carry forward from this. How can you apply this Anthropocene thinking, this long-term systems-wide perspective to your own life, your work, or your community? What seemingly small decision can you make today that, if it became a new norm, could ripple out and genuinely benefit the grandchildren of your grandchildren's grandchildren? That's the timescale we're talking about. What are you willing to start, even if you won't see its full fruition in your lifetime? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Daniel Goleman's focus. Until next time, keep digging into what truly matters.